Chosen one. Stop scrolling. Heaven has paused your feed, your thoughts, and even the noise around you, because this moment was written before you were formed in your mother's womb. Your destiny was spoken into existence. You were not thrown into this world by chance or chaos. You were sealed, handpicked, carried in the breath of God, and marked with a holy assignment. You are not like the rest, and you've always known it, even as a child. Something in you stirred when others were content. You questioned what no one else dared to voice. You saw beauty in ashes, and light in places others only saw dark. That wasn't imagination. That was revelation. You were sealed before birth. And now, the book is opening. The pain that followed you, it wasn't punishment. It was proof. Proof that the realm of darkness could see what you carried long before you even understood it. You felt resistance, not because you're weak, but because you're powerful. You've been fought harder, pulled deeper, because your light threatens every shadow in every room you enter. God's chosen one. Your life is not random. You didn't stumble onto this message. This is divine alignment. A meeting arranged before the foundation of the world. The seal on your book is breaking. The heavens are flipping open, the pages. What was hidden is about to be revealed. You've wondered why people left, why doors closed, why your journey felt so lonely at times. It was protection. You were not abandoned, you were hidden. God kept you sealed until the right moment. Because your assignment is too holy to be contaminated by premature influence. He delayed your promotion so you wouldn't be destroyed by platforms that came too early. The world doesn't need another copy. Heaven didn't choose you to blend in. You were chosen to disrupt, to disturb the darkness, to provoke righteousness, to release revival. There is something in your voice, in your presence, that triggers the enemy. That's why you've faced isolation. That's why your mind's been under fire. Because hell fears what happens when you finally realize who you are. You were sealed before birth. You were called by name in heaven's court. Your identity wasn't defined by trauma, or circumstance, or bloodline. It was declared in glory. The angels know your name. The darkness recognizes your seal. And now the book of your life is being opened page by page, moment by moment. What does that mean? It means you're entering a season where mysteries become movement, where what confused you before will start making sense, where doors you didn't knock on will open because they were written. You don't have to beg for what's already yours. You don't have to fight for what's been assigned. When the seal breaks, heaven moves. You'll begin to see signs, confirmations, and open doors that make no earthly sense. Favor you didn't earn. Protection you couldn't explain. Acceleration that overrides your delay. It's not because you're lucky, it's because you were always chosen. The timeline of your life is syncing with heaven's rhythm. What once was delayed is now released. It is written in the book of Revelation, chapter 3, verse 8. I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. I know that you have little strength, yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. You will soar, not crawl. You will rise, not be buried. You will fly over what once buried you. But listen to me before you take flight. You must believe it. You must shake off the lies that told you you're forgotten. You must silence the voice that said you're unworthy, because the seal is breaking, and your life is shifting into divine order. The time for shrinking is over. The time for pretending is over. You're not here to survive. You're here to shake nations. And your book has been sealed long enough. It's your time now. The scroll of heaven is open and your name is shining on the page. You are remembered. You are seen. You are known. Comment 777. Right now, if you know this word is for you. If you feel the stirring in your spirit, the shaking in your bones, don't scroll past this. This is your confirmation. Share this message with someone else who's been feeling the same war in their spirit. Like this. Save it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do that now, because this is only the beginning. The book was hidden, not lost, not forgotten. Hidden. There's a difference. You see, when something is lost, there's panic in the atmosphere, confusion, disorder, searching. But when something is hidden, it is placed with precision, covered intentionally, protected for a future, unveiling. And so it was with you. Long before you took your first breath, heaven wrote the blueprint of your life. Every step, every valley, every victory sealed within a scroll only heaven could open. But that scroll wasn't given to just anyone. It was kept out of reach, for your sake, because timing is everything in the kingdom. And if you had read the pages too early, you would have tried to run ahead of the process. Or worse, you would have doubted it and tried to change the ending God wrote with his own hand. So God hid it. The book of your destiny wasn't placed in the hands of man. It wasn't buried in the opinions of family or the assumptions of society. It was placed in the spirit, kept beneath layers of divine protection, shielded by warfare you never saw, covered by angels who warred over your timeline when you didn't even know you had one. There's a reason some seasons of your life didn't make sense, why things felt out of place. It's because you didn't have the context. The book was hidden. The why behind the warfare was concealed. The explanation behind your heartbreak was under seal. And God, in his mercy, allowed you to walk by faith, not by sight. Because if he had shown you too much too soon, it would have crushed you. He didn't hide the book to punish you. He hid it to protect you. Some things needed to mature in silence. Some seasons required hiddenness. Because what was growing inside you couldn't survive under constant observation, like a seed buried in the soil. Your purpose had to be covered in darkness before it could break open into light. But now the soil is shaking. The roots have reached deep enough. The seal is trembling. And the scroll is loosening in the spirit. The hidden book is stirring. That's why you feel it. That's why you can't stay asleep anymore. Something is waking up inside you. A knowing. A memory of something holy. You can't quite explain it. But your soul is restless in the presence of mediocrity. You can't go back to what used to satisfy you. The hunger has changed. The thirst is deeper. That's not emotional confusion, that's spiritual recognition. The book is moving. And when the scroll of your destiny starts to unroll, everything in you begins to respond. The veil thins. The dreams sharpen. The patterns in your life come into focus. It's like pieces of a puzzle you didn't even know were related, suddenly click together. People leave, and it finally makes sense. That delay now looks like a setup. That loss now feels like training. You begin to see how the hand of God has been scripting your story all along, not in chaos, but in perfect rhythm. Even your mistakes are being repenned in grace. Even your rebellion is being folded back into redemption. Nothing is wasted. Every page matters. And no one else can read your book because it wasn't written in the language of logic. It was written in the language of calling. That's why the enemy tried to keep you distracted, tried to keep you buried in confusion, doubt, addiction, relationships that drained your strength. Because as long as you stayed unaware of what was written, you couldn't walk in the authority of who you are. But the hiding place is no longer locked. The veil is lifting. What was once inaccessible is now awakening. You are beginning to remember what heaven has never forgotten. You've been sealed for this very hour. Hidden, yes, but never invisible to God. And now that the book is being opened, the words will begin to come alive. You'll recognize instructions in whispers, purpose in dreams, directions in divine delays. You'll no longer be guessing, you'll be discerning, because your life was never random. It was written. The prophet Elijah spoke as recorded in the first book of Kings, chapter 18, verse 21. How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him, but if Baal is Hot, follow him. But the people said nothing. Now that the book is before you, you cannot unread it. Now that the seal has broken, the scroll demands your response. It's not enough to know you're chosen. You must walk as one who is. You can no longer pretend you're ordinary. You can't unsee the pages. The book was hidden, but not anymore. You've carried this weight all your life, the sense that you didn't belong, that the world around you didn't fit. You tried to adapt, but it always felt like your soul was resisting something it couldn't name. That's not confusion. That's your spirit, remembering where you came from. You were sealed before birth, and your spirit still echoes with the sound of heaven's design. Chosen one. Let's speak plainly. You felt out of place not because something is wrong with you, but because something is right with you. Deeply right. Eternally right. You've been walking through a world that could never fully contain who you are. It tried. Systems tried. People tried. Even religion tried to categorize you. But nothing could lock you in because you were made from the breath of God himself. Earth could never feel like home because your origin is higher. Your sensitivity, that's not weakness. That's spiritual discernment. Your questions, not rebellion, just the cry of a soul that remembers there's more. Your silence in crowded rooms, not shyness. It's wisdom. You feel atmospheres. You hear beneath words. You sense what others ignore. And yet, you were misunderstood, often overlooked, even mistreated by the very people who were supposed to cover you. But listen carefully. The rejection was a reroute. The confusion was a cocoon. God was concealing you in what looked like isolation, but was actually transformation. You were never meant to blend in. You were meant to interrupt cycles, to break generational curses, to carry healing into dry places, to be the bridge that others refuse to build. But none of that could start until you realized this one truth. You were sealed before you were wounded. The wound did not define you. The betrayal did not rewrite your name. You were already chosen, already called, already known. This ache you carry in your chest, the feeling that there's something more, something holy waiting to break out of you, that's not delusion. That's memory. Divine memory. Your soul remembers the voice that called you before the trauma, the anointing that hovered over you before the anxiety. You were marked by purpose before pain ever touched your body. Let me tell you why the warfare has been so targeted. The enemy doesn't waste weapons on those who pose no threat. He's not after your appearance. He's not after your comfort. He's not even after your reputation. He's after your memory, your spiritual memory. Because if you ever remember who you really are, what you were sent here to do, he loses control. That's why he tries to drown you in distraction, tries to bury you under depression, tries to keep your heart wrapped in bitterness and old wounds, because bitterness blurs your vision. Trauma distorts your identity. But no matter how deep the confusion got, the truth remained sealed inside you. And now the seal is opening, and heaven is reminding you, you are not a mistake. You are not too late. You are not too broken. You are chosen. You felt misplaced because your spirit never agreed with what the world offered. It tried to clothe you in labels that didn't fit, tried to assign roles you were never designed to carry. But you couldn't stay comfortable in compromise, because sealed ones cannot be tamed. They can only be revealed in time, by fire, through surrender. The loneliness you've walked through, it's been sacred. God has been guarding your becoming. Some of your greatest seasons of silence were filled with invisible warfare on your behalf. You thought you were forgotten, but angels were on assignment. The silence wasn't rejection, it was refinement. Heaven was waiting for the moment you'd start to awaken to the truth you already carry inside. The Word of God declares in the book of Psalms, chapter 23, verse 4, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." Yes, you've walked through shadows, but they never swallowed you. You've been near death physically, emotionally, spiritually, but death couldn't claim what heaven sealed. So I'm going to ask you to do something bold. Comment, "I remember." Say it out loud as you type it. Why? Because something powerful happens when you give voice to what your spirit knows. When you declare, "I remember," you are not just talking about past memories. You're aligning your spirit with eternal truth. You're saying, "I remember the call. I remember I'm chosen. I remember there's purpose. I remember I'm sealed." And the moment you say it, hell trembles. Because memory is dangerous. A chosen one who remembers is unstoppable. No more spiritual amnesia. No more doubting your identity. No more believing lies whispered in your weakest hour. You were sealed. You were sent. And now, you're starting to remember. You've always been different, haven't you? Even when you tried to blend in, something about you just wouldn't conform. You could follow the rules, mimic the crowd, say the right words, but deep down, you always knew you were walking a road no one else could fully see. That inner dissonance, that lingering feeling that you don't quite fit, it's not in your head, it's in your spirit. Chosen one. You were set apart long before anyone recognized it. You didn't choose the path chose you, even in your earliest years. The fingerprints of God were evident, though the world around you couldn't perceive it. There were things you felt you couldn't explain, places you walked into and felt heavy without knowing why. People you loved who drained you without trying. That sensitivity wasn't weakness, it was proof. Proof that you were carrying something sacred, even when you didn't know how to name it. Others may have called you too quiet, too intense, too emotional, too serious. But they didn't understand. They couldn't see that you were born with an awareness most never touch in a lifetime. You felt everything deeper. The joy was louder. But so was the pain. Because the seal on your life made you sensitive to what others could ignore. And from a young age, Rejection tried to claim you. Some of it came through people who were supposed to protect you. Family, friends, teachers, leaders. They didn't see the light in you, so they tried to dim it. They didn't understand your depth, so they labeled you difficult. But what they failed to see was that God had already written your identity in heavenly ink. You weren't supposed to be understood by everyone. You weren't sent to be accepted. You were sent to be effective. There's always a price for being set apart. The ones who carry the mantle of heaven often walk roads of misunderstanding, isolation, and spiritual tension. You felt that tension for years, pulled between the world's expectations and the whisper of something greater, torn between being accepted and being obedient, wounded by the very places you tried to serve. But in all of that, God was watching. God was shaping. God was sealing. Even when you thought you were broken beyond repair, He was weaving every moment into His divine pattern. Even your failures were factored into the equation. Your detours, your disobedience, your denial, they never cancelled your calling, because you were marked. And nothing can erase a seal God Himself has written. When you were young, you may have assumed being chosen meant you'd be celebrated. But now you know better. Being chosen means being called out, set apart. It means walking into rooms and feeling what no one else feels, hearing what others silence, seeing things others overlook. And because of that, you've often stood alone. But you're not alone in heaven's eyes. What they saw as strangeness, God calls consecration. What they called stubbornness, God calls unveiling conviction. What they called weakness, heaven knows as intercession. You don't process like everyone else because your mind isn't built for conformity. It's built for clarity, kingdom clarity. And still, you've doubted yourself. You've looked at others and asked, why can't I be like them? But that question was never meant for you, because you're not like them. You weren't formed to follow the crowd. You were forged to confront darkness. That's why your journey's been different. That's why your training's been harder. God knew what He placed in you. He knew what would be required of you. And so, He allowed the pain to shape you, but not define you. The Word of God declares in the book of Philippians, chapter 4, verse 13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Yes, you can. Even when it doesn't feel like it. Even when your past screams otherwise. Because being chosen doesn't mean being perfect. It means being positioned. And you, beloved, have been positioned by the hand of the Almighty, even through the places you tried to run from. The moments that should have broken you were the very ones that built you. The words that tried to wound you only carved you deeper into purpose. You've been misunderstood because your calling is multi-dimensional. And some people will only ever see one layer, but God sees the whole scroll. He sees the oil on your life. He sees the tears cried in silence. He sees the strength it took just to keep standing. So, if you've ever wondered why it had to be this hard, remember this, because the call on your life is that holy. You've been shaped in silence, refined in rejection, and strengthened in shadows. And now, the time is drawing near. The book is no longer sealed. Your life is no longer on pause. Everything you've endured has been preparing you for the next chapter. The moment you were sealed, darkness took notice. There was no trumpet sound in the natural, no ceremony on earth, but in the spirit realm. Your sealing shook the air. Hell saw it, felt it. And that's when the warfare began. Not after your first mistake. Not after your worst decision. The attacks didn't begin when you failed. They started when you were chosen, when heaven marked you. The kingdom of darkness moved in opposition, and while you were still learning how to walk, demons were already drawing battle lines. Chosen one. This is why the battles started so young. Before you knew who you were, the enemy did. He could smell purpose on you. He could sense that you carried something that would disrupt generations of bondage. He saw what others didn't, and because of that, he launched an attack, not just on your mind or your body, but on your identity. If he could confuse who you are, he could delay what you'd become. But let's be clear, the attacks weren't proof that you were cursed, they were proof that you were called. There's a reason your life hasn't been easy. Why the trauma ran deep. Why betrayal came early. Why emotional wounds took root before you even had the words to describe them. It was warfare. And not just any warfare, strategic. Generational warfare. The enemy targeted your family line for years. Cycles of addiction. Patterns of rejection. Generational silence. He tried to take out your voice before it could be trained. Tried to cloud your mind before it could discern. Tried to pollute your heart before it could intercede. Because your existence was always a threat. Your awakening is his nightmare. But what the enemy didn't count on was your resilience. He didn't expect you to rise. He didn't expect you to survive. He thought the trauma would break you. He thought the heartbreak would finish you. He thought the silence would crush your spirit. But here you are, still standing, still seeking, still hearing God in the midst of the noise. And now, you're seeing it more clearly. Aren't you? That the patterns weren't just emotional, they were spiritual. That the rejection wasn't personal, it was prophetic. That the battles weren't about punishment, they were about preservation. God allowed certain things to be shaken loose because he was setting you apart. He let some people walk away because they couldn't go where you're going. This is the cost of being chosen. The warfare is real, but so is the grace that covers you. And every dart thrown at you had to pass through divine permission. Nothing touched you that God couldn't turn. Every attack has become oil. Every wound is now a well. What tried to bury you only deepened the foundation of your faith. It was proclaimed in the second letter to Timothy, chapter 1, verse 7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind. So, no, you're not losing your mind. That pressure you've felt isn't mental breakdown, it's spiritual birth. The contractions are spiritual, not psychological. You're pushing through resistance because something holy is coming forth. And now that you've come this far, don't turn back. Don't water yourself down to be accepted. Don't silence your voice to stay safe. You've paid a price most people will never understand. And God is not unjust. He will redeem it. He is redeeming it now. The very things that tried to destroy you are about to become the platform he uses to launch you. But hear this, you were never meant to fight this battle alone. You were never meant to carry this word in isolation. Others need to hear what you're waking up to. Others are still trapped in silence, still believing the lie that they are cursed when they are actually called. That's why this message isn't just for you, it's for the ones coming after you. The ones who still feel like misfits. The ones who still don't understand why their life has been so heavy. Share this with them. Send it to someone who's barely hanging on. Not because we're building a brand, but because we're breaking chains. If this word has confirmed what your spirit has been whispering, like it, save it, share it, not for applause, but for alignment, so that the right eyes see it, so that the right ears hear it, so that the right hearts remember who they are. And if you haven't yet, subscribe, not because I need followers, but because you need reminders, weekly reminders of who you are, what you carry, and why you cannot quit. These messages are not content, they're assignments, and you've just stepped into yours. Every section of this scroll is unfolding on purpose, and we are only getting started. You were protected in plain sight, even when it looked like you were exposed, even when it seemed like no one had your back, even when the people around you failed, betrayed, or abandoned you. God's hand was covering you, not in a loud, obvious way, but quietly, strategically, like a shadow that moves with the sun. His presence followed you in silence. There were moments you should have been destroyed, moments where the enemy set a trap and waited for you to walk in, moments where the wrong decision should have cost you everything, moments where depression had its hands around your throat, and anxiety tried to steal your breath. But somehow, you made it through. Somehow, you came out of what should have buried you. Somehow, what was sent to kill you only made you hunger for God more. That's not survival instinct, that's divine protection. Chosen one. You've been hidden in battle and preserved in chaos. You've walked through the fire, but the flames didn't consume you. That wasn't luck. That wasn't coincidence. That was the seal on your life, acting like a spiritual firewall. God didn't let certain things reach you, not because you were strong enough to resist them, but because you were chosen. Some people thought you were invisible, but the truth is, you were camouflaged by heaven. Yes, camouflaged, covered in the kind of grace that made you disappear from dangerous assignments. Hidden in plain sight, when relationships should have destroyed your calling. He shielded your name when others tried to drag it. He silenced the mouths of those who lied. He kept your spirit soft when bitterness tried to take root. And while you were asking, God, why do I feel so overlooked? He was saying, because I'm still preparing you. He didn't hide you to hurt you. He hid you to build you. Some anointings are born in visibility, but others like yours are formed in secret. And the more precious the oil, the deeper the hiding. Your anointing couldn't be rushed. Your character couldn't be shortcut. So he allowed you to feel invisible until the oil inside you matched the assignment ahead. You've walked into rooms where your presence made people uncomfortable before you ever spoke a word. That's not a personality issue. That's because you carry something spiritual, and spirits recognize each other. You disturb the atmosphere because you carry clarity. You trigger discomfort because you disrupt cycles. The warfare around you hasn't been because you're too much. It's because you're too pure for the polluted environments the enemy hoped you'd settle into. You've had dreams that warned you, feelings that protected you, unexplainable moments that pulled you away from danger just in time. And still, you doubted yourself. You questioned, was that really God? But look back. Look again. His protection wasn't always dramatic, but it was always precise. You weren't abandoned. You were hidden. God said, not yet. While others said, you're forgotten. He said, wait. When the world told you, move now. And he did it all to preserve what's inside you. The Word of God declares in the Gospel of John, chapter 14, Verse 27, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives." You've been sustained by that peace, even when nothing around you made sense. That peace is the evidence of protection, even when there was chaos in your mind, even when the pressure increased. That deep, underlying stillness, that was heaven guarding you from the inside out. This protection hasn't ended. In fact, it's intensifying, because as your purpose becomes clearer, so do the enemy's attempts to distract you. But don't be alarmed. The same hand that shielded you in darkness will guide you in light. The same angels that warred on your behalf when you were unaware will surround your steps as you obey. And now, a shift is happening. You're coming out of hiding, slowly, steadily. God is pulling the veil back. Your name is being whispered in rooms you've never entered. Your presence is being requested in places you didn't chase. Because the season of hiding was never meant to last forever. It was preparation for manifestation. But don't despise the hidden years. Don't resent the silence. Because everything you learned in the shadows is the very thing that will keep you anchored in the spotlight. So, if you feel this word in your spirit, if you know you've been protected in ways you can't explain, comment 444 right now. Not just as a number, but as a prophetic declaration. 4 is the number of divine order. It is the whisper of heaven saying, "I've placed you in alignment." When you type it, you're testifying that the protection wasn't random, it was orchestrated. You're not late, you're not lost, you're not overlooked. You're covered, you're positioned, you're sealed. The book begins to open, not all at once, not in a loud, dramatic scene like in the movies, but slowly, quietly, with a holy trembling in the atmosphere. Something sacred shifts when the pages of a sealed life begin to unfold. It's not just about revelation, it's about recognition. It's the moment where what you felt all along finally begins to align with what God wrote before time began. Chosen one. You are stepping into the unveiling. The book of your life, the one sealed in the Spirit before you were born, is beginning to open. That's why you've been feeling the shift. Why certain things no longer feel right. Why you can't tolerate what used to entertain you. Why your spirit has become restless with shallow answers and empty routines. The book is opening, and your soul knows it. You've been sensing that this season is different, even if you can't put language to it. It's like something holy is hovering just beyond the veil. Like heaven is breathing over the script of your existence. This is what happens when the pages turn, and it doesn't begin with clarity. It begins with discomfort. God often stirs the next chapter with a holy unrest. You can no longer stay in places that feel lifeless. You start craving solitude. Not because you're lonely, but because you're listening. Old habits begin to fall off, not by force, but by futility. What once numbed you no longer soothes you. You're being pulled into alignment with something deeper. And that pulling, that inner tension, it's the sound of the seal cracking. This opening doesn't come through effort. It comes through surrender. You don't pry the book open with willpower. You posture yourself before God and say, "Speak, Lord, I'm ready to hear what's been hidden." And when you say that with your life, not just your lips, heaven responds. Chosen one. There are instructions written in that book that the enemy has tried to keep hidden from you, not by blocking the book, but by flooding your life with distraction, because distraction is the enemy's counterfeit revelation. He knows if he can keep you busy, bitter, or broken. He can keep you blind, but no more. You are entering a season where you begin to see, not with your eyes, but with your spirit. You start to recognize divine patterns. A conversation confirms something you've been dreaming. A delay turns out to be divine redirection. Someone walks away, and suddenly your peace returns. These are not coincidences. These are the sentences of your book being read out loud by the Spirit. And here's the beautiful part: the more you walk in obedience, the more He shows you. The more you align, the more is revealed. God doesn't waste revelation on rebellion, but when your heart begins to echo His voice, when you let go of what doesn't belong, the pages begin to turn faster. Sometimes, the revelation comes like a flash of insight, a deep knowing that changes everything. Other times, it comes gently through patterns, through stillness, through recurring themes that God keeps placing before you. You begin to feel more than you understand. And yet, what you feel makes more sense than anything you've ever known. This is how heaven speaks to the sealed ones. This is how the book opens. There are chapters in your life you haven't lived yet, but they are written. And the opening of the book isn't just about calling, it's about timing. What God wrote about you has been waiting for this exact moment to unfold. That's why you couldn't force certain doors open before. That's why you couldn't understand the delay, because the book was not ready to turn its next page. But now it is. The season has shifted. The ink is still fresh in the spirit. And as you lean in, as you quiet the noise and posture your heart, you'll begin to hear. Your spirit will start catching phrases, snippets of heaven's design. You'll find yourself knowing things you never studied, praying things you never planned, feeling led to do things that don't make sense logically, but feel absolutely right spiritually. That's not coincidence. That's the scroll being unsealed. And with every page, your authority grows, not because you're gaining power, but because you're remembering who you already are. The more you walk in what's written, the more heaven backs you. You won't need to beg for opportunities. They will come, not because you chased them, but because they were assigned to find you at this exact moment. Scripture says in the Gospel of John, chapter 16, verse 13, when the Spirit of truth comes, He will guide you into all truth. So let your heart stay soft. Let your mind stay surrendered. Because the book is opening, the pages are turning, and what was once hidden is now being revealed in you, through you. And for the glory of the one who wrote it all, you felt it, haven't you? The shift, the pressure, the tension that seems to come out of nowhere, the sudden storms that rise up just when you begin to find peace, the invisible weight that seems to rest on your shoulders for no reason at all. It's not your imagination. It's not random. It's not bad luck. It's warfare. And it's personal. The attacks have intensified lately because the book is opening. The enemy has caught wind of what's been written about you. He doesn't know everything. He can't read the full scroll, but he can feel the movement. He knows when something is about to be released in the spirit realm, and he sends resistance in waves, hoping to wear you down before you arrive. He can't stop the pages from turning, but he can try to distract you so you never read them. The moment you began to align yourself with heaven, the moment you started shedding old habits, walking away from old cycles, and reclaiming your identity, it triggered something in the spirit. The darkness that had grown used to your silence was suddenly disturbed. Your obedience set off alarms in hell. That's why the resistance increased right after your surrender. That's why confusion showed up just as clarity was being formed. That's why you felt more spiritual heaviness in a season where you were trying to get closer to God. The warfare doesn't always mean you're going the wrong way. Sometimes it confirms you're finally on the right one. Chosen one. Hear this. Opposition is often a signal. It doesn't feel like confirmation, but it is. The storm is proof that you've stepped into territory that scares the enemy. If you were still asleep spiritually, if you were still distracted and disengaged, he would have left you alone. But the moment you began to wake up, to pray deeper, to listen closer, to walk away from the familiar, that's when the alarms started blaring in the dark. He knows what you carry. He knows the weight of your words when you speak from a place of obedience. He knows that once you step into your assignment, he loses ground that took him generations to claim. So he throws fear. He stirs confusion. He whispers lies. He magnifies weakness. He twists facts. Anything to keep you off balance. Hesitant. Second-guessing what God has already confirmed in you. But this is not the time to bow to fear. This is the time to stand. The pressure you're feeling isn't a sign of defeat. It's the weight of transition. You are standing at the threshold of divine release. Your footsteps are echoing through realms you can't even see. What you're birthing in obedience is creating shockwaves in both heaven and hell. This isn't minor. This is major. And the enemy is afraid. That's why he sent people to misunderstand you. Why your name was dragged without reason. Why doors closed suddenly and relationships shifted with no explanation. It was all part of a desperate attempt to silence you. But it didn't work. You're still here. Still listening. Still moving forward, even if it's slow. Even if it's quiet. The Word of God declares in the book of Isaiah, chapter 54, verse 17, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment you shall condemn." The weapons may form. You may see them, feel them, be impacted by the sound of them, but they won't prosper. They can shake you, but they can't shatter you. Because your foundation isn't built on public opinion, or temporary feelings, or passing circumstances. It's built on the sealed truth of who you are and who you belong to. This isn't the time to panic, it's the time to press in. The resistance isn't a wall, it's a signal. It's telling you something sacred is happening beneath the surface. It's telling you your next chapter is about to be walked out in real time. It's reminding you that your prayers have been heard, your name has been known, and your book is being read in heaven. So hold fast. Even when the pressure is relentless, stand firm. Even when the fog refuses to lift, speak truth. Even when your voice shakes. Because the intensity of this battle only confirms the magnitude of what's coming next. There's something you've been experiencing that you haven't fully been able to explain, not to your friends, not to your family, maybe not even to yourself. It shows up at night, sometimes in your sleep, sometimes in that fragile space between dreaming and waking. A whisper, a vision, a name being spoken in the dark, and that name is yours. Chosen one. You are being called. This is not the product of overthinking. It's not a byproduct of stress. It's not emotional overload. This is spiritual. What you are sensing in your dreams. What you are feeling in your gut. what you can't shake. Even after you wake up, it's divine. It's God speaking. Heaven is calling your spirit into attention. Even when your mind doesn't yet understand, you've noticed the dreams are different now. They're more vivid, more urgent, more symbolic. Sometimes they don't make sense immediately, but you wake up knowing they mean something. A place you've never seen before suddenly feels familiar. A person you haven't thought of in years appears in your sleep. A number, a name, a word keeps repeating. This is not noise. This is language from another realm. You are not crazy. You are being contacted. There are things your spirit knows that your conscious mind hasn't caught up to yet. Your dreams are the realm where God bypasses your distractions and speaks straight to your soul. That's why you've woken up with tears on your face. That's why you've felt the weight of a word you didn't even remember until later in the day. That's why your sleep has been lighter, more restless, interrupted by something you can't quite name. God is activating you in the night, because in the silence, in the stillness, He has access to you. When the noise dies down, when the notifications stop, when the performance ends and the masks fall off, He comes, not always with thunder, sometimes just with a whisper, and often that whisper sounds like your name. The prophet Samuel heard it. He was just a boy when God whispered his name in the dark. At first, he thought it was someone else, but it was God, calling him, waking him, positioning him for what was to come. And just like Samuel, you're beginning to recognize the voice calling you out of sleep. The enemy will try to discredit this. He'll try to convince you it's nothing, that you're overthinking, that God doesn't speak like that anymore. But the enemy is a liar. And deep down, you already know the truth. You know this isn't natural. You know the dreams are too specific, the timing too precise, the conviction too strong. There's an assignment awakening within you. You've started to sense burdens that weren't yours. You've felt led to pray for people out of nowhere. You've been prompted to write things down, to look things up, to revisit prophetic words spoken over you years ago. Your discernment is sharpening. Your spiritual vision is clearing. You're not imagining it, you're evolving. And it's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle. A verse that shows up in a dream and then appears in your devotion the next morning. A stranger saying something that confirms what you just heard in the secret place. These are not coincidences. They are echoes from heaven. Your book is being read over you in the night. It is written in the book of Job, chapter 33, verses 15 and 16. In a dream, in a vision of the night. When deep sleep falls on people as they slumber in their beds, He may speak in their ears and terrify them with warnings. God is still speaking this way. He's doing it now. To you, He is awakening the watchmen, stirring the intercessors, calling forth the prophets, not the ones with microphones, the ones with a mantle, not the ones chasing platforms, the ones who've been marked in private. That includes you. So what should you do? You don't have to force anything. You don't have to chase the supernatural. Just posture your heart. Begin to write what you dream. Begin to pray when you wake up in the middle of the night. Begin to say, "Here I am, Lord," when your spirit stirs in the quiet hours. And right now, if this resonates with you, if you've been waking up, stirred, burdened, or overwhelmed by dreams you can't ignore, comment, "I hear you." Let that be your declaration, your response to the one who's been calling, the one who's been speaking to you in the night. waiting for you to realize this isn't your imagination. This is your invitation. He's calling, you're hearing, and something is shifting. You've been trained in shadows. While others were building publicly, you were being broken privately. While people around you were chasing stages and validation, God was taking you through a curriculum no one saw, and it wasn't easy. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't applauded, but it was divine, because the kind of oil you carry can't be taught. It has to be crushed. Chosen one. God trains his warriors in the dark. That's why your journey has felt so backwards at times. You've asked yourself, why am I going through this? Why do I feel like I'm stuck while others rise? Why does everything take longer for me? Because you're not being built for convenience. You're being forged for consequence. What comes from you will shift atmospheres, break chains, and carry glory, and that kind of power must be developed out of sight. You didn't miss your moment. You were being prepared for it. You've walked through hidden seasons where no one clapped for you, where you poured yourself out and received nothing in return, where you prayed for others while silently bleeding, where you carried others and no one noticed the weight you were under. And in all of that, God was shaping something sacred in you, character. He was building the part of you that will outlast applause. He was solidifying the foundation that won't crack under pressure. Because when the spotlight finally finds you, it won't be your talent that sustains you, it will be your integrity. And that's what he was building in the shadows. You've learned to hear his voice without needing confirmation. You've learned to walk by faith when all the signs said, give up. End of quote. You've learned to wait on his timing, even when your heart was breaking. And now, something in your spirit is starting to rise. It's subtle but undeniable. You feel the strength coming back, the clarity, the authority. The brokenness taught you how to bow, and now heaven is teaching you how to rise. Not with arrogance, not with ego, but with holy confidence. The kind that comes from knowing that the fire didn't destroy you, it refined you. It was declared in the book of James, chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. Consider it pure joy. My brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. This is what your trials have done. They've made you whole. You're not who you were a year ago, even 6 months ago. You've shed layers. You've buried lies. You've let go of what no longer aligns. The cutting away has been painful, but necessary, because the version of you that's stepping into this next chapter is stronger, wiser, purer, and rooted in truth. And now the Spirit of God is saying, move forward boldly. No more apologizing for your light. No more minimizing your voice to make others comfortable. No more rehearsing old wounds. You've been trained in silence so you could speak with authority. You've been hidden for years so you could carry something that lasts. This is not the season to shrink back. This is the moment to step in fully, freely, fearlessly. And if this word is confirming what your spirit already knows, if you feel the alignment, the release, the holy permission, don't keep it to yourself. There are others who've been trained in shadows too. Others who are on the edge of quitting because they think no one sees them. They need to hear that being unseen doesn't mean being unused, that the training matters. Share this message with them. Let it remind them that obscurity is not failure, it's formation. Like this message, if your wilderness built you, if your private pain taught you to pray, if your silent seasons trained you to hear God in a way no platform ever could, and if you haven't already, subscribe, not because we're building an audience, but because this is a movement, a gathering of chosen ones, trained in secret, stepping into visibility with purity and power. You don't need another opinion, you need divine alignment. And that's what this space is for. We're not just delivering words, we're delivering weapons, truths forged in fire, words that carry weight. And you, yes, you were born to carry this mantle. Don't despise the shadows. They were your sanctuary. The darkness taught you what the light could never reveal. Now you rise, not because it's your turn, but because it's your time. What the book says about you is not what people have said. What was written in heaven does not match the labels you've carried on earth. You've been called many names in your life too much. Too quiet, too emotional, too intense. Not enough. People spoke from their limitations, not God's revelation. They reacted to their discomfort, not your design. But heaven never used those names. Heaven called you royal, chosen one. You were written as royalty, not in the way the world defines it with crowns and applause and outward status, but in authority, in weight, in sacred appointment. You were born with spiritual rank. You were clothed in spiritual inheritance. That's why you've never been able to settle for shallow living. Your spirit rejects anything less than purpose. The book doesn't define you by your failure. It doesn't record your identity according to your past. The record of heaven does not say broken, unworthy, or rejected. The scroll of your destiny calls you warrior, intercessor, torchbearer, heir. You were born to carry a mantle that your bloodline may have never seen before. That's why your life has been so different. That's why the tension has followed you from room to room. You are the one heaven wrote about for this generation. You may not look like what people expect. You may not speak like the crowd. You may not come with a long resume or impressive title. But what you carry is real. And real doesn't need approval. Real was spoken by God before you ever took your first breath. Real is written in a book that no man can erase. Heaven has never been confused about your assignment, even when you were, even when you ran from it, even when you questioned if you were worthy of it. The record didn't change. The seal didn't lift. The scroll didn't tear. The calling wasn't cancelled. It was preserved. And now, the words are rising off the page. Chosen one. Listen closely. The version of yourself that the enemy has been attacking is not the version that the world has seen. It's the version written in the book. He doesn't come after where you are. He comes after where you're called. That's why the attacks feel disproportionate. That's why your warfare seems heavier than your current position. Because hell isn't reacting to your present, it's reacting to your destiny. You were written as one who sets captives free. You were written as one who carries the keys to unlock others. You were written as one who walks into broken places and brings order. That's why rejection came early. It tried to steal your identity before you could grow into it. That's why insecurity hit you hard. It tried to mute your voice before you even knew what it carried. That's why certain relationships seemed sent to distract, delay, and dismantle. But none of it could rewrite what was written. It is written in the book of Ephesians, chapter 2, verse 10. For we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. And The assignment is older than your awareness. The identity is deeper than your doubt. You were created with intentionality, not assembled randomly. You are not the result of generational patterns, you are the interruption of them. That's why the pressure has felt generational, because what you carry breaks things that have lasted for decades. You were written as a breaker, a restorer, a revealer. You were not called to imitate someone else's walk. You were not designed to conform to a version of Christianity that is passive, performative, and powerless. No, you were written as a living threat to the kingdom of darkness. That's why you feel deeply. That's why you've been attacked emotionally and mentally. Because your heart is not weak, it's sensitive. And it's sacred. It connects to heaven in a way that words often can't express. The book says you are marked. The book says you are equipped. The book says you are backed by heaven. And no matter how many detours you've taken, no matter how many mistakes you've made, no matter how long you stayed in hiding, God is not rewriting your story to fit your failures. He's unfolding it according to what He already knew about you. He's weaving every moment, every scar, every closed door back into the original plan. The plan where you walk in power. The plan where you move in purpose. The plan where your very presence breaks spiritual atmospheres. So the next time the enemy tries to remind you of who you've been, remind him of what is written. Because the book doesn't lie. And the one who wrote it does not change his mind. You are not a mistake. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are exactly what heaven said you are. And the scroll confirms it. There is a scroll of assignment unrolling in the spirit, and your name is written on it. This isn't just about being called anymore, it's about being commissioned. The time for observing is ending. The time for walking in divine instruction has come. Heaven is not simply identifying you. Heaven is activating you. The scroll that is being opened now doesn't just reveal identity, it carries instruction. Specific, timed, tailored for this season of your life. There is a movement of divine order in the unseen realm, and you are not on the outside of it. You're at the center of it. The scroll is no longer sealed, and what it says is calling you to move. This is the part of your journey where heaven begins to release assignments that you didn't choose, but you were chosen for. Assignments that may stretch you, cost you, or even isolate you, but they will awaken you, because you weren't created for comfort. You were created for impact. That's why things have been uncomfortable lately. There's been a shift in the air, a heaviness that doesn't always feel like depression but like pressure, a sense that something is happening, even if you can't explain it. That's the weight of the scroll being unrolled. You're not just feeling life, you're feeling instruction. Heaven is placing the next line of your destiny before you, and your spirit is sensing it before your mind catches up. God is handing out scrolls in this hour, not to the qualified, not to the loudest voices, but to the surrendered, to the ones who have been hidden in caves, to the ones who have prayed when no one listened, to the ones who were faithful when no one clapped, to the ones who kept their oil burning while others were distracted. You don't receive the scroll by performance. You receive it by alignment. The scroll doesn't respond to hype. It responds to hunger. And make no mistake, your hunger has reached heaven. God is now calling you to carry out what He's written, not just to hear the word, but to become it. Not just to sense the call, but to walk in it. That's why you can't stay where you used to be. That's why compromise tastes bitter now. Why what once felt like enough now feels empty. Because something eternal is speaking inside you. The scroll is open. The words are living. And you must answer. This next chapter will not be led by your emotions. It will be led by obedience. Not comfort. Not convenience. Obedience. The Word of God declares in the book of Revelation, chapter 10, verse 10, I took the little scroll from the angel's hand and ate it. It tasted as sweet as honey in my mouth. But when I had eaten it, my stomach turned sour. And do you understand what that means? Chosen one, when you first receive what's written for you, it's beautiful. It confirms what your heart has longed to hear. It speaks to your soul with sweetness. But once you begin to carry it, once it settles into the core of who you are, the weight of it begins to manifest. The glory is real, but so is the responsibility. The scroll tastes like honey, but feels like fire in your bones. God is not calling you into easy. He's calling you into eternal. And yes, some people will not understand. Some will question your decisions. Some will mislabel your obedience as rebellion. But they weren't present when the scroll was handed to you. They didn't hear the instruction. They didn't feel the fire. So don't expect validation from those who didn't witness the commission. Chosen one. There is now a divine invitation to walk in what has been assigned. And that doesn't just mean doing more, it means becoming more. Letting the scroll shape your daily decisions. Letting His instruction override your fear. Letting His word direct your steps. Even when the road ahead feels unfamiliar, and if your spirit is burning right now, if you feel this word reaching into your core, if you know heaven is showing you the assignment you've been waiting for, comment Samson 55 below. That number is a prophetic signal of divine movement, grace upon grace, a heavenly transition. When you type 555, you're not just responding to a number, you're saying, I hear, I see, I accept. You're saying, God, I don't want to stay in the same place. I choose to obey the scroll. And you've waited long enough. You've prepared in silence. Now it's time to walk in the Word. This is your scroll. This is your season. And this is your response. The cost of ignoring it is greater than you think. It's not just about missed blessings or delayed breakthroughs. It's not just about unanswered prayers or lost opportunities. When heaven opens your scroll and reveals your divine assignment, when God breathes on your name and confirms what was written before the foundation of the world, you are no longer unaware. You are accountable. And with that accountability comes a choice. Obey the call or delay the destiny. God, in His mercy, waits. He whispers. He confirms. He opens doors no one else sees. But there comes a time when the waiting turns into warning, when delay is no longer innocent, and hesitation becomes disobedience. When ignoring the instruction doesn't just slow you down, it costs you something eternal. Chosen one. You've been entrusted with revelation. That means heaven sees you as responsible enough to carry it. But with revelation comes risk. Because once the light is turned on, you can no longer pretend you're in the dark. There is a line in the Spirit that very few recognize until they cross it, the line where mercy doesn't disappear, but it steps back, where the conviction that once felt warm now feels distant, where the door remains open, but your heart becomes too numb to walk through it. God will not force your obedience. He invites it, and when that invitation is ignored long enough, your ears grow dull, your heart hardens, and the vision once so clear starts to fade, not because God changed his mind, but because you stopped responding. Don't let that happen to you. You've come too far. You've cried too many tears. You've survived too much to forfeit your scroll now. This isn't just about you. It's about the generations connected to your yes. The people who are still bound because your obedience is the key that unlocks their freedom. The lives still stuck in cycles because you haven't stepped into your assigned place. This is why the enemy fights your consistency. Why every time you try to move forward, distractions multiply. Why compromise seems easier than conviction? Because he knows that as long as you hesitate, heaven's timeline remains delayed. He doesn't have to destroy you, he just has to keep you undecided. But your scroll is open now, and every day you delay is a day you drift. Not away from God's love, but from your assignment, from your impact, from your spiritual sharpness. You were never meant to just survive. You were called to advance the kingdom. And every time you silence that voice inside you, something holy dims. The Word of God declares in the book of Hebrews, chapter 10, verse 26, if we deliberately keep on sinning after we have received the knowledge of the truth, no sacrifice for sins is left. That verse may sound harsh, but it's not about condemnation, it's about urgency. It's a divine alarm, a sacred reminder that once you know, there is no going back to spiritual ignorance. You cannot unsee what heaven has shown you. You cannot unread the scroll that now lives inside your spirit. You have been given a window, and windows don't stay open forever. In the days of Noah, the ark was open for a time. People laughed. They delayed. They lived as if the rain would never come. But the rain did come. And when God shut the door, it did not open again. That's not fear, it's truth. And truth, when spoken in love, brings freedom. This is not to scare you, it's to wake you. You are not like the rest. The call on your life is not casual. The assignment on your scroll is not optional. There's a weight on your name, a responsibility on your obedience. The same God who whispered to you in secret is now holding you accountable in the open, not to punish you, but to fulfill you. You were never meant to live a half-life. Partial obedience is still disobedience. And deep down, you know what needs to be done. That relationship that's draining your anointing, you've already been told to release it. That habit that numbs your sensitivity, it's already been exposed. That assignment you keep pushing off because you feel unworthy, heaven already called your name. Your scroll is not waiting for you to feel ready. It's waiting for you to say yes. Because delay has a cost, and the price is purpose. So take this seriously. This isn't just another word, it's a warning wrapped in love. You've been marked. You've been summoned. And the longer you ignore the call, the more distant your clarity becomes. But here's the good news. It's not too late. The scroll is still open. The window is still present. And if you're reading this now, it means grace is still reaching for you. Don't waste it. The mantle is falling now. Not someday. Not eventually. Now. This very hour, even as your heart is stirred, even as your spirit bears witness, something from heaven is descending unseen but undeniable. This is not imagination. This is impartation. A holy exchange is happening. What you once only observed in others, you are now being called to carry. Mantles are not fabric. They're not symbolic decorations or lofty ideas. A mantle is weight. It is divine authority wrapped in responsibility. It is God placing something on your shoulders that once rested on the shoulders of someone else, someone who carried it faithfully until their time was finished. Now, it's your turn. The mantle that fits your spirit is falling into place. You don't earn a mantle. You inherit one. And inheritance isn't based on perfection, it's based on positioning. The mantle falls on the ones who've been refined, the ones who stayed when others ran, the ones who prayed through the silence, the ones who yielded in the fire. Not everyone around you will see the shift, but heaven does. You're not just being affirmed, you're being entrusted. With a greater measure, with new clarity, with fresh authority, you've walked through the wilderness, and now you are being clothed in what the wilderness prepared you to carry. Look at the stories of old. Elijah passed his mantle to Elisha, not because Elisha was the loudest, the most visible, or the most popular. He received it because he followed faithfully. He served with honor. He stayed close when others stayed distant. And when the moment came, he didn't hesitate. He didn't say, "I need more time to prepare." He said, "Let me inherit a double portion." That moment required boldness, and so does yours. This is the hour when mantles are being transferred, not based on credentials, but on surrender. The ones who will carry this next move of God aren't the most eloquent, they're the most available. God is not looking for perfect vessels. He's looking for yielded ones. And you've been yielding. Even when you didn't realize it. Your yes in the secret place has built a runway for the mantle. Your obedience in hiddenness has qualified you to carry what others dropped. You've been saying, "God, use me." And heaven has been listening. But here's what many don't understand. When a mantle falls, a weight follows. The anointing will set you apart. But the mantle will cost you something. It will cost you comfort, familiarity, convenience, sometimes relationships, sometimes applause. Because the moment the mantle lands, your life becomes a conduit for something far bigger than you. You're no longer just living for yourself, you're living for what the mantle carries. And that's why the warfare increased. Because the enemy knew what was coming before you did. He saw the shadow of the mantle moving toward you, and he panicked. He threw every distraction he could find. Emotional storms, relational friction, mental exhaustion. Because he knew that once you wear what God has assigned, you become a threat at a whole new level. But here's the truth the enemy hates. It's too late. The mantle is already falling. You may not feel ready. But God is not asking how you feel. He's looking at your heart. And your heart has been saying yes when your mouth couldn't find the words. You've been positioned by surrender. And heaven responds to that. The prophet Elijah spoke as recorded in the first book of Kings, chapter 19, verse 19. So Elijah went from there and found Elisha. He threw his cloak around him. It happened just like that. One moment Elisha was plowing. The next moment, he was called. That's how quickly it can shift. That's how suddenly God can move. One moment you're in the background. The next moment, the mantle lands, and everything changes. But understand this, the mantle is not about fame. It's not about platform. It's not about being known by man. It's about being trusted by God. Trusted to carry His word, to steward His glory, to walk in authority without arrogance, to love fiercely, intercede deeply, and move powerfully. Chosen one. The mantle is not coming to flatter you, It's coming to assign you. Your life will change. Your circle may shift, but your heart must stay anchored. The mantle does not come to elevate ego, it comes to commission hearts, to break yokes, to birth revival, to heal bloodlines, to confront darkness, and it is falling now. You are not being called to copy. You are being called to carry. Receive what is yours. Walk in it. Heaven has chosen you, not just to believe, but to bear the mantle. This is a divine confrontation. You are standing in a holy collision between the version of you shaped by wounds and fear, and the version of you written by the hand of God. This is not emotional hype. This is spiritual awakening. A confrontation between who you were forced to become and who you were always destined to be. Chosen one. You cannot delay any longer. Every false identity is being challenged right now. The labels that came from trauma, from failure, from rejection, they're trembling under the weight of truth. Heaven is not asking you to improve the old version of yourself. Heaven is asking you to let it die, because you were never meant to carry what you've carried. And this moment is proof that your true identity is rising. You feel it, don't you? The inner wrestle, the ache to break free, the pressure that builds every time you try to settle for less than what your spirit knows is possible. That is divine confrontation, not to shame you, but to awaken you. This is heaven's mercy, calling you back to alignment, because you've been set apart for too long to stay silent now. You've walked through too much to turn back now. God didn't preserve you through betrayal, delay, and spiritual drought just to leave you wandering. He brought you here for this moment, to expose the lies that kept you small, to strip the masks that no longer fit, to remind you, you are not who the world said you are. You are who He says you are. But now you must decide. Will you live as the chosen one you are, or continue to rehearse the limitations placed on you by fear? You cannot walk in full anointing while clinging to partial obedience. You cannot carry the mantle if you still entertain the mindset of a victim. You cannot activate what's written if you keep second-guessing what's been sealed. And heaven will not beg you. God is calling you forward, not forcefully, but faithfully. His invitation is clear. The scroll is unsealed. The assignment is revealed. The mantle is within reach. But your yes is still required. Not the kind of yes spoken in worship, but cancelled by your lifestyle. The kind of yes that costs. The kind that rewrites your routine. The kind that ends cycles and opens heaven. Scripture declares in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 30, verse 19, I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live. This isn't just about you, it's generational. What you decide today will echo in your bloodline tomorrow. This confrontation is not just for your freedom, it's for the legacy that follows you. This is why the fire's been hotter, why the pressure's been unrelenting, why the silence has been deafening. Because heaven has been waiting for your real yes. Not the emotional one, the eternal one. And right now, if you feel that stirring in your belly, that weight in your chest, that trembling in your spirit, don't ignore it. Don't brush this off like just another message. This is an altar moment. Right where you are, comment below. My answer is yes. ND. Let it be a declaration that cuts through fear. Let it be a response from your spirit. When you type it, it's not just a reply, it's a release. It's the moment heaven records your agreement. It's the second hell loses its grip on your indecision. Or maybe this resonates with a deeper ache in you, an ache to finally step into the version of yourself that was written. Then say this instead. Comment, "No more running." End. Because that's what this moment really is. The end of running. The end of delay. The end of hiding in false safety. The end of shrinking to survive. This is your rise. And when you say it, mean it. Let heaven hear it. Let darkness feel it. Let every false identity collapse under the weight of your surrender. If this word has pulled you into deeper awareness, like it. If it confronted you with love and truth, share it with someone else who needs to remember who they are. And if you haven't already, subscribe. Not just for content, but for confirmation. Because more is coming. More instruction. More alignment. More prophetic insight into the scroll that bears your name. You are not lost. You are not late. You are not disqualified. You are at the point of divine confrontation, and it is also the point of divine release. What happens when you obey? Everything begins to shift, not only around you, but within you. Obedience is not just the beginning of your assignment, it is the doorway to divine acceleration. The moment your yes becomes more than a whisper, heaven begins to move on your behalf in ways you could never orchestrate on your own. Obedience activates alignment. It causes the right people to find you without striving. It causes doors to open without force. It causes distractions to fall away without you chasing them. You stop having to beg for clarity because obedience unlocks vision. God doesn't reveal the full picture to the undecided, but the moment your heart anchors into what He's spoken, the fog begins to lift. You may not see 10 steps ahead, but you'll always know the next one. When you obey, confusion loses its grip. The enemy's tactic is always noise, mental noise, emotional noise, relational noise, anything to keep you from hearing that still small voice. But obedience silences the chaos. It brings peace into the room, not because everything becomes easy, but because you know you're moving with heaven. There's a rhythm to divine obedience. It won't always make sense to your logic. It won't always match what others expect of you. But when God speaks and you move, even your missteps are redeemed. Even what should have failed begins to prosper. Not because you're perfect, but because you're positioned. Some of the battles you've been fighting have been tied not to disobedience, but to hesitation. When God gives you instruction and you delay, that delay can open the door to unnecessary warfare. You begin to overthink. You start to consult opinions instead of the Spirit. You revisit what you were already told to leave, and in doing so, you invite the very confusion God was trying to deliver you from. Obedience is protection. It's not about rules. It's about preservation. God sees what you cannot see. When He says, "Let go," it's because He sees where that path ends. When He says, "Go now," it's because He knows the timing is precise. When He says, "Be still," it's not to punish you, it's to prepare you. Every command is wrapped in love, even when it's wrapped in mystery. And here's what most don't realize. Obedience doesn't just change your external world. It changes your capacity. Your spiritual sensitivity sharpens. Your discernment increases. Your endurance strengthens. What used to offend you no longer touches you. What used to exhaust you becomes your fuel. Obedience transforms you from the inside out. You begin to pray differently. You begin to see people differently. You begin to handle warfare with confidence instead of fear. And you begin to realize This has never been about religion. It's been about relationship. Your obedience is not a performance. It's an agreement. It says, God, I trust you more than I trust myself. It says, I choose your way even when mine feels easier. It says, I'm ready to walk in what you wrote, even if I don't fully understand it yet. Oath. It was written in the book of Isaiah, chapter 1, verse 19. If you are willing and obedient, you will eat the good of the land. The good of the land isn't just material provision. It's spiritual rest. It's favor you didn't chase. Peace that surpasses understanding. Doors that recognize your presence because they were designed to respond to your obedience. People often wait for breakthrough, not realizing that obedience is the breakthrough. You don't wait for the path to be easy. You obey, and the path becomes possible. God parts the waters when you step, not when you analyze. Miracles follow motion. Glory follows surrender. And sometimes the most powerful obedience is quiet. You don't have to announce your shift. Just move. Let your decisions speak. Let your fruit speak. Let the peace you carry announce what heaven has already declared. Obedience often begins in private, but its impact will be impossible to hide. You'll begin to notice how people respond to you differently, how the atmosphere changes when you speak, how resistance bows when you walk in authority, because obedience marks you. It places something on your life that can't be mimicked or manufactured. It's the scent of submission, and darkness recognizes it. So, if you've been waiting for a sign to go forward, to step out, to release what no longer belongs, this is it. When you obey, heaven responds. When you obey, angels move. When you obey, you become unstoppable, not because the road gets easier, but because your spirit gets stronger. This is what obedience does. It makes you unshakable. And the ones who obey in this hour, they will not walk. They will run. Doors will fly open. Chains will break on contact. And everything that tried to delay them will be left behind in the dust of purpose. Your life is a living scroll. You may not realize it yet. But every day you wake up and keep moving forward, despite the warfare, the pressure, the uncertainty. You are revealing a portion of what was written about you before time began. Your life is not random. It is not a collection of broken chapters and unfinished ideas. It is a scroll, unfolding in real time, line by line, marked by divine ink. You are the message, not just the recipient of a word, but the embodiment of one. God didn't only speak to you, He spoke through you. You were not just saved to be safe. You were sent to carry something into this generation that no one else can replicate. Every experience, every pain, every revelation, every tear, it's all part of what was sealed in heaven and is now being revealed on earth. You are not just living a life. You are walking prophecy. This is why your journey has been so unusual. Why nothing ever felt quite like it fit. You weren't meant to fit. You were meant to speak. Not always with words, but with presence, with posture, with choices. Your obedience has written paragraphs in the spirit. Your silence in the midst of chaos has released declarations of power. You didn't know it then, but heaven was recording everything. The scroll of your life is not something external. It's in you, etched in your spirit, written into your DNA. This is why the enemy has tried so hard to distract you, derail you, and bury you. He knows you are not just a vessel, You are a voice, not for your own fame, but for heaven's agenda. And now, the scroll is speaking louder. Your life is beginning to reflect more of what was always intended. You're becoming more sensitive to divine patterns, more aware of spiritual timing, more alert to distractions and detours. It's not because you've arrived, it's because you've aligned. And alignment always leads to acceleration. There are people who will read your life before they read a Bible. They will watch how you respond to pain, how you forgive when it hurts, how you carry peace when everything around you is shaking. That's the scroll, speaking, witnessing, declaring. Your life is not a mistake, it's a message. You are the evidence of God's power to redeem, rebuild, and release purpose from broken places. The enemy wanted you silenced, but heaven wants you seen, not to be glorified, but to be read. You don't need a stage to be impactful. Your presence is already speaking. Every time you choose obedience over comfort, every time you choose integrity when no one is watching, you are prophesying without words. It is written in the second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 3, verse 3. You show that you are a letter from Christ, written not with ink, but with the Spirit of the living God. Not on tablets of stone, but on tablets of human hearts. That's you. You are a letter, a living scroll. You are God's reminder to this generation that He still writes stories worth reading, that He still redeems timelines, that He still speaks through the ones who were supposed to be disqualified, that He still turns silence into sound, ashes into beauty, and loss into language. Your story doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be His. Your past doesn't need to be erased. It needs to be redeemed. The scars on your soul don't disqualify you. They validate the weight of your scroll. Even now, heaven is still writing. You are not at the end. There are more chapters to unfold, more territory to step into, more people to reach, more deliverance to release through your obedience. Don't let what you've walked through convince you that your scroll is finished. It's not. What's ahead is not a repeat. It's a reveal. You are about to walk into pages you haven't read yet, but they've always been written. There are assignments waiting for your yes. There are atmospheres waiting for your presence. There are doors waiting for your obedience to knock. And when you walk into what God has written, nothing can stop it. You are the message, the miracle, the messenger. You are what the scroll has been saying all along. And heaven is still writing, chosen one. You've come to the end of this scroll, but not the end of your story. What you've just received is not just encouragement, it's activation. Every word was sent to awaken what was already placed inside you. And now, the responsibility shifts. The question is no longer, am I chosen? The question is, will I walk like it? You are not here by accident. You are not just a follower. You are a forerunner, a breaker of chains, a carrier of light, a voice for your generation. And heaven is still writing through you. So walk boldly, live fully, obey relentlessly, because every step forward confirms what was written long ago, that you were sealed before birth. And the book is now opened. If this message stirred your spirit, don't let it stop here. Comment below, I received the scroll. Let the spiritual realm know that you heard, and you're ready. Like this message, if you felt it speak directly to your soul, share it with someone who is standing on the edge of their calling. Your obedience could be their confirmation. And if you haven't yet, Subscribe. This isn't just a feed, it's a flow. Stay connected to the voice that reminds you who you are when the world tries to make you forget. This is your time. This is your scroll. Heaven is not finished with you yet. Welcome to the beginning of everything God already wrote.